How many will be taken to court of prosecution and dealt with, according to the law?
Well, I hope you take responsibility.
That is about Benue. Let's go over to what we have for you today. Now, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on FCT Brief. Now, the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran, two powerful and long-standing adversaries in the Middle East, is sparking global concern, not only for its direct impact on the region, but also for the ripple effects it may trigger across the world, including Africa and more specifically Nigeria. While the battleground may be thousands of kilometers away, the implications of this war are already being felt much closer to home. From energy prices to regional security, migration to diplomatic alignments, Africa and Nigeria in particular cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. One of the most immediate consequences is the potential spike in global oil prices. Both Israel and Iran are strategically located near the Strait of Hormuz, a vital channel for oil exports. Any disruption in that region may lead to sharp increases in crude oil prices.
Ironically, while Nigeria is an oil-producing nation, it may still suffer from inflationary impact due to its dependence on imported refined products. There are also concerns about heightened security threats as Iran maintains alliances with non-state actors and proxy groups around the world. There are further fears that increased hostilities may lead to more radicalization of terror funding that could trickle into parts of Africa, especially regions already battling extremism like the Sahel and northeastern Nigeria. The war may also test African diplomacy as many African nations enjoy bilateral relations with both Israel and Iran. Navigating this tension without losing strategic partnerships will be a delicate task. Additionally, rising instability in the Middle East could push more migrants into Africa, either temporarily or as part of wider refugee movements. For more on the likely implications of the war between Israel and Iran, let's bring in a public affairs analyst, Jide Ujo, who joins us live in our studio this morning. It's good to have you in our studio this morning, Mr. Jide Ujo.
Good morning, TJ.
Nice to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
We also have joining us via Zoom a global affairs analyst, Solomon Soja. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning, Mr. Solomon Soja. All right, let's jump straight into the issues, and I'll begin with you, Mr. Soja, or should I start with you because of the nature of the question? Let me start with you, Mr. Ujo. Global conflicts like this often spark into religious reprisals in Nigeria. What should security agencies be doing now to avoid or avert this kind of threat?
Well, unfortunately, we have our hands full. You just talked about the Benue massacre, which is quite unfortunate, and the Nigerian military is already overwhelmed. But nonetheless, our security agencies, particularly the intelligence community, the DSS, the NIA, and DIA, and all of the other agencies need to heighten their intelligence gathering because, as you know, this could actually lead to radicalization. We know the Shiite group in Nigeria are actually kind of affiliated to Iran. And you saw how many killings have happened in the case of El Zakzaki and his family because he's the leader of the group in Nigeria. And, of course, even outside of that, we've seen how the issue of Palestine has led to murder in other countries. You know, recently in U.S., a couple who were about to wed were gone to death by sympathizers of Hamas or the Palestine people. I also saw the footage of a lady who wore just a T-shirt of Palestine in German parliament who was asked to leave the chambers because of the sympathy. So these things do have, ripple effects, and we may not, unless we avert our minds to it, this could present a greater security challenge for us. because whether we like it or not, there are those, even Nigerian citizens, who have either emotional or religious affiliations to Israel or to Iran, to Islam or to Christianity. And this is more like, I've seen heated debates, even in Nigerian elite circles, where people took very entrenched position that, what Israel is doing is right, he has to protect himself and all of that. And then the Muslim world will say, this is genocidal, why do you want to eliminate? But, if you go historically, you will know that the two of them share the blame. Iran does not want State of Israel to be. It has pledged, unmitigated, destruction, that it was going to destroy the State of Israel. And the State of Israel, from this Yom Kippur War of 1967 today, after suffering the Holocaust, they've had to develop resilience to make sure that they survive, because they have nowhere else to go. They've been all over the world. They've been murdered in the Holocaust, in the gas chambers of Adolf Hitler during the Second World War. And now they have come and they have claimed that they have the right to existence. And what you saw over the past few days was a preemptive attempt to decimate the nuclear warhead of Iran. But long story short, I think people of goodwill need to stand up, because the more this lingers, the more the fallout and the ripple effect will be felt across the world, not just in Africa, not just in Nigeria, but across the world.
Okay. Mr. Soldier, let me come to you with this. Considering this conflict, Iran, Israel, now we're looking at the implications on Africa, on Nigeria. Now, how do you think the governments in Africa or the government in Nigeria should begin to deal with the issue? Because definitely there's going to be ripple effect, whether on the price of crude, whether with refugees moving into Nigeria, whether with terrorists coming in and all that. What should the intelligence community begin to do to ensure that this possible negative effect is not overbearing on the system and complicating the present difficult situation we have on our hands?
Right, like you rightly said, for Nigeria and so many other African countries that heavily relies on imports from the Middle East and all this, this could mean, as you rightly said, increase in pricing, and when fuel prices go up, food prices go up, and everything generally, including transportation, would eventually go up. But a great way the country can really take a strong position here is to stop pointing fingers. As Mr. Ojo has said, most times when we see conflicts like this, the Christians try to align towards Israel, and then Muslims try to align towards Iran. But I don't think that would be very helpful in the situation where we continue to point fingers and saying, from the point of view of Israel, it's necessary for national security, and then from the point of view of Iran, it's just not justified. I would say an open dialogue. The presidency and in fact the governments can really take proactive measures to have open dialogue and push for negotiation to come to the table, diplomacy, to make sure this whole stuff gets resolved quickly in a way where we don't get to feel the effect of this conflict that is not necessarily close to us, but then would feel the results, would feel the impact on crude prices, like you rightly said. So I would say that we should do as much as we can to have open and clear conversations where we're not necessarily pointing finger, but just looking for the way forward to see how we can talk more about this and find easy common ground that we can all agree and say this is what we should push for very, very, very sustainable pace.
Well, Mr. Soldier, Israel's ambassador to Nigeria claims that Iran is secretly spending millions to gain influence and destabilize the country. Is this true, and how serious should Nigeria take this threat?
Well, Iran continues to get a lot of these allegations, a lot of these things said against them. They're secretly building nuclear weapons and all this stuff. Now, there's no way to know if this is true or not if the Iranian government have not come out themselves to say we're doing this or we're sponsoring terrorists in northern Nigeria or whatever. I would say, again, this comes back to communication and trust to a significant level, because the whole cause of this war in the first place is speculations like this. Israel thinking they've got intelligence that giving them enough reason to strike at Iran and their nuclear assets to make sure they decapacitate them, that they don't have the means to attack them as a country. If we continue to work with speculations like this without necessarily giving that benefit of doubt of like inviting the Iranian diplomats to the table in Nigeria to really ask them in confidence as to what's happening and how we can agree for them to stop funding, if they are currently funding terrorist groups in Nigeria, and the measures or consequences that they could face if they carry on in these actions. So I would say we just need to have Iran to come more on the table, and to do this definitely is not by violence, because if anything, violence, like violent attacks like what Israel is doing to Iran, would only make them more stubborn, would only give them more reason to feel like the only way to deter the US or the UK or Israel from attacking them consistently is by having nuclear weapons. So I personally, I would never, ever, ever recommend violent measures to foster peace. If anything, you just need more and more diplomacy and dialogue. So I would encourage the presidency to do more in inviting the ambassador from both sides and to have more conversations diplomatically.
Okay. Mr. Ojo, let me come to you with this. In the conflict between Israel and Gaza, we saw Palestine, we saw the position South Africa took in leading a resolution against the nation of Israel. Now, South Africa is one of the biggest countries in Africa. Nigeria is also one of the biggest countries, a country in Africa. Now, how will you advise that the Nigerian government approach this conflict, whether it's with the Palestinians, whether it is with Iran, in taking position? South Africa seems to have taken position. How should we, as a country, should we toe the line of South Africa, or should we toe the line of non-alignment that is actually part of our foreign policy, because it will also have whether negative consequence, whichever position we take? So how will you advise?
So my own advice is we stay non-aligned. It's in our best interest to do so. You saw the backlash on Ramaphosa, with the U.S. coming heavy and accusing Ramaphosa's government of genocidal attack on the white farmers and the killings and all of that today. So look at that embarrassment that was given to Ramaphosa and his team on invitation, just similar to what Zelensky suffered, when he was ambushed with media, an interview. And I think while Ramaphosa may have taken that route of even lodging a complaint at ICC against the state of Israel, we all know where the backers of Israel, where they are. They are not hidden. The Western world is the one backing state of Israel. Even in this conflict, you've seen the statements issued by Macron, by Keir Starmer, by U.S. government saying, we are not involved, but we may get involved in the coming days. But the most worrisome for me is even what came out over the weekend, that Benjamin Netanyahu was going to take out the Israeli Prime Minister, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Although the CNN reported that two officials confirmed that, but Benjamin Netanyahu denied. But assuming that had happened, which was a possibility, given that even in this conflict, some heads of intelligence and military of Israel and of Iran had been eliminated. Look at what ripple effect. And now Iran is threatening to attack the base of Western world in the Middle East, starting with U.S., and France and UK. If that happens, that will internationalize the world and take it out of Middle East per se. And that's why, given that we have our own internal challenges, which is enormous, we shouldn't add to it. We know our strategic interest with U.S. and with other Western allies. You could see that the Nigerian government is already building alliance with France over the past 2 years with the frequent visits of the president, some business deals with the organized private sector and all of that. So the moment you take a position that is seen to be condemnable of State of Israel, you are already indirectly incurring the wrath of the allies of Israel. And you know, Israel has a very powerful lobby group in U.S., the Jewish caucus. They are very powerful and very ruthless. So Nigeria needs to tread very carefully. What I will advise we do, Nigerian president is the head of ECOWAS. ECOWAS, head of state and government. It needs to link up with African Union. Let the African Union take a position. And what is that position supposed to be? To call for de-escalation of this crisis and to rein in, this attack. On the two sides, I find it very difficult who to blame. The reason being that State of Israel is under perpetual threat of annihilation from 1967. In fact, predating that. So they have had to do everything to survive. But look at it, even now, pilgrimage is being affected. I'm not sure anyone, well, maybe Tijesu may want to go on holy pilgrimage this year. She had a second thought about going under this kind of situation. Because even overnight, there were ballistic missiles, there were, with all the secure air defense and all of that, the some still went in, even if it's 10%, if it's 20%. Lives are being lost on both sides. In fact, what I read this morning is that even the oil facility of Israel has been attacked, and that of Iran too. And that is going to readily spike global oil prices if it's sustained. Although invariably Nigeria may benefit, because if there is spike in global oil prices, we will have more to fund our budget. But that will only come if we are self-sufficient in domestic oil production. Otherwise, we will be importing inflation. And that may lead to also increase in the per liter of refined petroleum products domestically. So on both sides, I think we need to call for de-escalation. We need to call for moderation. We need to call for there was already a meeting between Israel and Iranian leadership in Oman that was supposed to continue yesterday, but had to be cancelled because of the preemptive strike by Israel. So I think the Western world can talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, give us a chance to get through with this deal. And this whole thing was precipitated by Donald Trump. Remember, there was already a subsisting deal under Barack Obama, which he pulled out of. Now, they are trying to renegotiate. And in the course of renegotiation, meeting was scheduled for yesterday, and by Friday or Thursday, this strike started to happen. While it may be condemnable that, okay, Iran is amassing nuclear warheads, remember what U.S. did in Baghdad, Iraq, in the 1990-1991, where they claimed that Saddam Hussein has a weapon of mass destruction, which they could not show evidence. And yet, you destroyed the man, you destroyed the economy. Iraq has not survived. Iraq has been wobbling since then. Now you call a dog a bad name. You are saying Iran has nuclear war, is doing, there are 10 sites and all of that. But who says Israel does not have? Who says, does Russia not have? Does all the Western world, do they not have all this? But when it comes to countries that are not at their level, they criminalize them and they want to eliminate them. So on both sides, we need to call for moderation. Antonio Guterres has done the right thing by condemning and asking for the escalation and moderation. But diplomacy have to take the front seat in all of this, because the more you take sides, the more the crisis will linger and the ripple effect will be on all of us, not just the countries at war.
Rightly said. Well, Mr. Soja, many people feel that the United States should have done more to stop this before it escalated. Has the U.S. been too quiet, or would you say they have been working behind the scenes?
Well, I would say the U.S. has been very and clearly supportive to the Israeli state, which is expected because that's their ally. At the same time, you can't be calling for negotiation and then you kill the people that you should have on the negotiation table. And then if you're having negotiation, who are you negotiating with if you've killed half of them? So, yeah, the U.S., I don't even know if to say, I can say they are even on a neutral position, but with the look of things, and as Mr. Ojas rightly said, not supporting Israel in itself can already be seen as anti-Semitism. And so if you look at the position of Israel and see how they are positioned in the midst of their enemies and having like multifaceted wars already happening against Hamas, Gaza, Hezbollah, Lebanon, you can't say America has been very quiet. They've not been quiet at all. If anything, they've been very preemptive and wanting a permanent solution to this war, doing their best as much as they can, especially in the Biden administration. With Trump now, the support has been really heavy to Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's very happy about it, which is fine, except that from the Iranian perspective, it will be seen as unfair because you're calling for negotiation, you're killing the top government officials, it's looking almost like you're trying to take over the government or cause unrest in the Iranian state. So, if anything, I would imagine that because of the military power the US has, they should be able to call this to order. They should be able to put a permanent stop to this, because these missile exchanges is just killing the people that have no business with this, which are the civilians, people, working parents and children going to school that would just expect to go to school the next morning, but then just sleeping at 2 a.m. at night, and then you see missiles dropping from the skies on your head. And so, if anything, with the military might of the UK, the US, NATO, and all these allies of Israel, they should put a strong position as the big brother here and be like, we can't continue like this. We can't continue to have innocent lives and people dying. The same energy they put towards Ukraine and having Putin to stop the war should come here too and try to have Israel to stop the war. As Mr. Ojo said, back then with Iraq, where they claimed Iraq had weapons of mass destruction with no clear evidence, even if there were to be evidence, but look at the conditions of the country today, like destabilized, the whole resources and everything. There's literally no government or little or no effort from the government today. Now, Iran is heading towards that position with what's happening, because when this continues to escalate and then the U.S. starts to put more measure, because there's no way the U.S. will threaten Iran to not hit any of their targets or their bases, and then they're supporting Israel, shooting down their missiles. Eventually, Iran would also react to start to target their bases, their embassies, and all these places, just to make their own people feel like they are irrelevant and worthy government. Because no one in power, no president or supreme leader wants to feel like they are just there doing nothing and just allowing people take over and just bombard them with cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Right, they would also want to show power, to have a little bit of respect from their own people. All right, Mr.
Soja. Soja, let me come to you with this. With this strike by Israel, there is an early spike even in the price of crude. I remember also we used to have the Gulf War windfall. There was this about $12 billion that is unaccounted for. And definitely, if we don't pray that this war extends beyond but if it does, positively, it's going to raise the crude price. We're going to benefit. But how should we handle the extra dollars that come in, the benchmark is $75 to $1, and the extra in case it goes beyond that, I think we should have a way of managing the increase in revenue so that we don't go back to what happened during the Gulf War. And
well said, Eshomo. However, before we celebrate that, we should not celebrate blood money because the lives are being lost. And I empathize. None of us, you and I, we never had a choice of where to be born. So it's an accident of birth. If you are born in Iraq, you are most likely going to be a Muslim. You are most likely going to be a Shiite. If you are born in Israel, you are most likely not going to be a Christian, but a Jew. So it's an accident of birth. And when this kind of conflict happens, humanity should take number one. Look at the internally displaced persons. Look at the refugee crisis. Even with all the superior firepower that Israel seems to have, the citizens are traumatized. Because now you, in the middle of sleep, you hear alarm that you should run to the bunker. The bunker is not where you go and have a nice rest. The children are traumatized, even with all the, and lives are being lost. So, but on the positive side, if we do make more money, let me predict what will happen. We will be able to fund our budget better. This is June. We are already in deficit. You could see that Mr. President actually sent, borrowing plan. He wanted to borrow more money because of the shortfall. Benchmark was 75, but crude oil is being sold at 60, 62, 65. So there is a loss, and if you want to now halt further borrowing, you have to use whatever comes in as a buffer. So if the price continues to rise, it will mean that we will borrow less and we'll be able to fund our budget more easily. But to talk of windfall will come if the crisis escalates to the point that maybe we are now, crude oil is being sold for like $100 to a barrel, in which case you are talking of about $25 on every barrel that you can save. But that will mean what that initially will translate to is that your foreign reserve will be heavy. You will be able to have more resources in your foreign reserve, and you become more credit-worthy. You'll be able to fund your budget better. But I think we should look at more production to have more revenue than to be expectant of this kind of windfall, which may be lost again into corruption. Because, as we said, 12.5 billion in 1991, unaccounted for, fly with the wings. So, all said and done, the most important thing, let this crisis be resolved. Let there be de-escalation, and let there be peace for global peace and security's sake.
Let there be peace. I think that's where we'll leave the conversation this morning. We must say thank you so much, Mr. Jide Ojo. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Also, Mr. Solomon Soja, it's also a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that's our conversation today. Thank you for joining in. We'll now hand you over